Good morning, 7th graders. You are going to start with a warm-up this morning for Tuesday, March 16th to review what you learned in yesterday's lesson. So your warm-up is actually linked here on the agenda. So if you look at number 1, letter A, so if at any point you need to have that a little bit larger to read, you can pull that up if you need to. Otherwise, I'm going to put it here on my video right now, so you could use it here as well. And so you'll need for your warm-up a calculator and just using scrap piece of paper, right? So I'm going to ask you to find the decimal form of these fractions in number 1, A through D, to review that because we'll come across some fractions within some of the work we do today. So I want to make sure you're okay with converting those fractions to decimals correctly. And then number 2 and number 3, these are ones that we went through yesterday. So we did a map example, and we also did actually a model of a bridge out of the book. And so take about 5 to 8 minutes on your warm-up today and work those through, and then I'll meet you back here and we'll go over the answers. So pause the video, work on your warm-up. I'll see you in a few. Okay, so let's go over your answers to the warm-up. So 1/5, taking that fraction to a decimal. When you do 1 out of 5 or 1 divided by 5, you should see 0.2. And so if I put my calculator up to the camera here, that's exactly what you should be seeing as your decimal format for 1/5. The next one, letter B, 3/8. So 3 divided by 8, you're going to see this decimal right here. And I don't want you to round it. I want you to, just leave it as it is. So 0.375. 0.375 or 375 thousandths. Okay. Letter C, 2/3. 2 divided by 3. And so this is another decimal that's a little bit longer. In fact, this one doesn't end. It's repeating. So 0.666, right? And it keeps going. So I'm going to use the bar notation. I'm not going to round it. So for 2/3, I'm going to say 0.6, repeating with the bar over it. 5/6, 5 out of 6. So 5 divided by 6, also a repeating decimal, and it repeats in the second digit there in the hundredths. So 0.8333, the 3 is going to repeat. And so we're going to use that bar notation over the 3 only. Okay. So again, just being comfortable with that, remembering how to do it, because we're going to see some problems with some fractions today. So number 2, so let me come back up here to the warm-up. And number 2 gave you just a description of a map of Hollywood, California, and the scale is 1 inch is 5 miles. So if the city is 5 inches across the map, what is the actual distance across the city? So what you're looking for, right, is how many miles it's going to be to travel across Hollywood. So we start with that scale. We talked about that. So that first fraction in your proportion is that scale of 1 inch on the map of Hollywood is equal to or proportionate to the 5 miles actually driven in your car in that city. So if it's telling us in the story that it's 5 inches across the Hollywood, across the city Hollywood, on the map, we're going to make sure inches and inches are matching here in the numerator. And we're going to solve for X, the number of miles actually driven across Hollywood. And so we talked about labels matching. And now what we're going to do is go through and solve it, right? So I do my cross multiply. I do 1 times X. And I do 5 times 5. And so 25 miles actual driven in your car across that city. So you solved for the actual this time. Number 3. Okay. An engineer makes a model of a bridge using a scale of 1 inch is 4 feet. The length of the actual bridge is 50 feet. What is the length of the model? So now this time you're going from the actual to the smaller version, right? The scaled down version. And so you start with setting up that scale, right? So for every inch on that model of the bridge, it represents 4 feet actual on the bridge. And so we know in the story that it's 50 feet across the bridge actual. So feet and feet, those are matching in the denominator. And like I said, what you're trying to find is in the model of the bridge, the amount of inches. So X goes on top this time. So when we solve, right, cross multiply here, I have 4 times X, 4X equals 1 times 50. 50. So, these situations are going to happen where you're going to have sometimes a number with the variable. You have 4 with the variable here. This says 4 times X. Well, we have to undo that, right? We have to solve this one-step equation because we're trying to find out how many inches on the model of the bridge. So now this is going to leave me with 1X. And then 50 divided by 4. So we're going to leave this decimal as well. You should have gotten 12.5. So 12.5 inches on the model of the bridge, the length on the model of the bridge. So number 2 was working from small to big, the map to the actual distance. And number 3, we were working from the larger, the bigger to the small. So we were having we were looking at the bridge, the actual amount of feet, going down to then the model size of it. So there's your warm up. That's a review of what we covered yesterday in class. So I'm going to come back up here to the agenda. The next thing you're going to need, and I'm going to meet you on a separate video here, is page 578 in your book. You need your calculator. And then we will also be looking at a lesson 4 worksheet that your crew teachers received. So you should have that in front of you as well, ready to go. If you are virtual, then you are using this link right here to get to that worksheet. So I'm going to end this video. I will see you back on the next video with your book open to page 578.